The Houston Texans defensive line go looking for love in Green Bay. That and much more on the Locked On Texans podcast.
Hit it!
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday's edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If this is your first time here, I need you to go to the YouTube channel and do three things for me. I need you to like, subscribe, and comment. And if you're one of our everydayers from the Himalayas, bring it in. Give us a hug. We appreciate you. We love you. And give you a big Sarge salute. On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, John and I would talk about concerns heading into Sunday's matchup against the Packers. Is Denico Autry a major key to success? And what is the best plan of action for victory for the Houston Texans?
I'm John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, y'all heard his voice. Texans credential media member, Brian Big Sarge Badfield. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Big Sarge.
What's going down?
First and foremost, to our everydayers out there, and if you were new to the YouTube channel, shout out to you guys for holding it down for the Houston Texans going up against the Green Bay Packers. My man, Peter Bukowski, was talking real greasy.
Oh, he was. Sideways.
About them Packers, man. On the crossover edition, you held it down, and everybody came to the YouTube comments and held it down as well. So shout out to the fans that listen, and shout out to the Texan fans all around the world. Sarge, I do think there are some concerns heading into Sunday's matchup. Let's be frank about it. I mean, even Denico Ryans came out and said, listen, he loves Jordan Love's pinpoint accuracy. He can do it all. Gave kudos to Matt LaFleur, calling him an excellent coach. Continue by saying does a great job of moving players around pre-snap and taking advantage of what it creates. Point in case, the Houston Texans had an issue a little bit with that going up against the Minnesota Vikings, who uses a lot of pre-snap motion on nearly 78% of their passing plays. So for the Texans matching up with the Green Bay Packers, I do think there are some concerns there. And I think one of the major concerns for me, when I look at everything, Sarge, I got to be real, man. And this is the Green Bay Packers team that I think has a very dangerous receiving group. Yeah. They don't have a clear-cut number one receiver. That's not the case, but they have a dangerous group. They have the second best rushing attack in the NFL right now. Josh Jacobs is top 5 in the league in rushing yards. They run a ton of outside zones. So we're going to expect Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter to be phenomenal for the Houston Texans. And, of course, we'll talk about Denico Autry. This is one of the more complete teams in the NFL, and I do think the Texans will have their hands full, but I am extremely worried with how the Houston Texans will handle Jayden Reed, who was on the injury report, but he is expected to play Sunday. He's been extremely dangerous for the Green Bay Packers. Right now, Reed is averaging nearly 5 adjusted yards per route run from the slot, which is higher than the NFL average right now, and the average is 1.69. He's also second in the league from yards from scrimmage behind Nico Collins. So he's a very dangerous weapon for the Green Bay Packers, and he's become Green Bay's most reliable receiver. Presumably, Jalen Petrie will be the one we'll see on Jayden Reed. I got to tell you, right now, Petrie has been – the numbers are kind of inflated. He's been playing good football for the Houston Texans. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Actually, I think he's been playing some damn good football for the Houston Texans. He's only allowed 115 yards to slot receivers in 136 coverage snaps in the slot this year. That's only 19 yards per game, right? But until you take a deeper look at the fact, over half of those yards come from two players, Christian Kirk and Pop Douglas, two true slot receivers that accounted for 78 of those yards between the two of them.
Yeah.
So right now, that's a major concern for me. I don't know if it's going to be Jalen Petrie on Reed the entire time. And again, they move those guys around a lot. I know we're going to see that matchup, but my worry right now is if it's Jalen Petrie, if it's Eric Murray, I do think Houston will have some trouble on Sunday.
Well, John, so my thing is this, and I said this on a crossover show, and it got a lot of pushback. Yes, I like Reed. Yes, I like Watson. Yes, I like Dobbs, and those are some receivers, some fast wide receivers, and I'll get to Reed in just a second. But when I look at Romeo Dobbs, when I look at Christian Watson, I know that they are two dynamic wide receivers in the NFL. I'm not taking anything away from them, but I know that both of them returned against the Arizona Cardinals on last week. My thing is they're also inconsistent.
Very inconsistent.
They're inconsistent. Like Reed, no, this is his second year in the league, if I'm not mistaken, right? So he's learned. He's going to be a very good one. But I mean, coming into this game, I mean, I don't know. I haven't read too much, but I mean, I guess Romeo Dobbs is happy again. He's not upset with the organization. And Christian Watson, I guess that
he's playing because he always has injury concerns. So
and that's exactly that's my point, John. I know that Jordan Love has two capable wide receivers that can run 9 routes. I know they can run 9 routes. I know that they can run fly routes, and I know that the Houston Texans, without Kamari Lassiter, it may not be with Kamari Lassiter this week, and no Jimmy Ward. I know we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So I know that these two guys can take the top off of any defense. I got that part. But I don't want Derek Stingley's speed to be underestimated either. Like that last week against the New England Patriots. Hey, that was just a lackadaisical play, a lazy play by Derek. He got caught not paying attention. So I digress. John, in order to get the ball to these wide receivers that are great at running the go route, I don't know how good they are running other routes. You're going to have time. I just do not think that Jordan Love is going to have the type of time to be able to dissect to dissect that defense and get the ball to those wide receivers. Oh, you got your hand up like you in church. Go ahead.
Yeah, brother, please follow me if you will.
But
and this is why, guys, we had talks for nearly 2 months about making sure Big Sarge takes over for Cody, because we're on the same page. And I want to mention that I'm not, when I say a group overall, the group overall, when healthy and on the field, because they do a multitude of things to complement all 3 of them. And they got, Tyler Kraft and that bunch as well. But Reed is who I'm really worried about. But to your point, Sarge, time is absolutely needed. And when Jordan Love is under pressure this year, he has looked like a totally different quarterback. I mean,
preach.
He's been abysmal under pressure.
Come on,
right now, outside of Sunday's matchup, when he's under pressure, he had a passer rating of 23.3. Right. And so I do think we're going to see a good blend and mix of Will and Daniil rotating sides to create various matchup issues on the Packers.
Well, hold on, Pastor. Let me throw something in there with your 23.
If you will.
You said your 23.what%?
Pass rating.
That breaks down when he's under pressure. 18 to 45, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Let the church say amen.
Amen.
And so, John.
Amen. And the Packers offense hasn't necessarily been productive versus the blitz this year. 25th in EPA versus the blitz, Peter Bukowski. So there are ways around limiting some of these playmakers, like a Reed. If you can get the ball in his hands, he's a playmaker. And again, he's the most scarier receiver that they have right now. Shout out to my fantasy team. Yeah. He's doing everything he can to keep me afloat. But if you can get into the face of Jordan Love and get him rattled, and I think early and often, I really do believe that's the best plan of action for the Houston Texans to pull out this victory Sunday. And we're going to really need a good mix and bunch and great plays from both Daniil Will and Denico Autry, which we'll get into.
And John, one more thing, one of my major concerns is injuries at the linebacker position.
Because you can't blitz as much, because you trust the backing of the defense. Now that's where them concerns come in, Sarge.
Yeah, and can you really stop a running back like Josh Jacobs, who has generated, I think, 26 or 28 missed tackles, which is tied for 6th in the NFL? a player who runs like Marshawn Lynch and looks for contact. I called him a contact magnet. He looks for contact and he doesn't stop. And so if you have a limited Azeez Al-Shaair, how much is he really going, to make that? He's going to give 100%, but his mind may say 100%, his body may say 80%. If you don't have Henry To'oTo'o, who has not practiced this week, who's still in the concussion protocol, one thing that I do like is that you have a madman that can play either in Azeez's position or on the side of Azeez, in Neville Hewitt, who is nothing but a tackle machine.
Yeah, I do want to go back to the point that I think there's some secondary concerns. No Kamari. That Houston's going to have to lean on D'Angelo Ross a little bit more. Played very good in his role last week, but again, two different offenses, two different expectations. And then Jimmy Ward, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? A lot of expectations on Kamari, Kalen Bullock, excuse me.
Gotta be
Denico
alert.
said, gotta be alert. He cannot bite. He cannot overrun some of those plays. Denico said the key is guys got to be in a position.
Yes.
Guys got to be where they are supposed to be, because you cannot allow minor miscommunication issues and biting, when players are not fully developed. That's going to hurt the Houston Texans on the back end of their defense. So they got to be smart and they got to be prepared. But we got to talk about Denico Autry on the other side. He is back for the Houston Texans. Let the church say amen one time.
Amen.
So we'll dive into that and more on the other side of the break. But first, this is a perfect opportunity to let you guys know about Arena Club. If you're one of those people that love collecting cards, whether it's like a Patrick Mahomes rookie card or a CJ Stroud rookie card, if you're one of those collectors that just love collecting, then you understand that, hey, sometimes the card that you want may cost a lot of money, some serious money to drop on some of those cards. But arenaclub.com has it to where now it's possible to score gem mint condition cards for a fraction of the retail price. Every card that you're looking for is on Arena Club slab packs right now. Just go to arenaclub.com to check them out. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and a clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs, are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pools are revealed, they immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, and auction. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL and using code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL to get 10% off your first purchase. And also, with that being said, PrizePicks is still hooking y'all up the way they've been hooking y'all up all year long. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money on sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everybody. All you have to do is pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. And the best part about PrizePicks, in my opinion, sometimes we don't know who to bet for, what to bet, what area or direction we should go in. PrizePicks offers the community plays under the promo tab of the app, where you can play alongside PrizePicks' biggest community members like Drewski, like Joe Budden, and more. Once you do that, view those names, and you'll see what they are betting for the week, what over, under, what more than or less than are they looking at for the week. And PrizePicks withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Whenever you hit, you can get your money within 15 minutes. So it's super simple, super easy. Download the app today and use code LockedOnNFL to get $50 instantly after you place your $5 bet, your first $5 bet. Once again, use promo code LockedOnNFL to get $50 instantly when you place your first $5 bet. PrizePicks, run your game.
I would say he's toughness first and foremost. I would say he's a very unique rusher. just as a sort of, not really I want to say hybrid, but as a big end and an inside rusher. I mean, he's had success at both spots, so it's he just offers some different pitches in terms of when he rushes inside, he rushes like an end inside, which is hard sometimes for guards. A lot of times offensive linemen interior can, there's not a lot of space. It's close quarters combat when you're rushing inside, right? And so sometimes there's not a lot of room for moves or things. You got to be a little bit more direct. Somehow he's able to create some space and rush. Like when you're rushing on the edge and you have sort of a little bit more area to like build momentum and put a move on and stuff because you're operating in a wider space. He kind of brings that ability inside, which is kind of hard sometimes. It's pretty unique for him. So he can rush on the edge. He can rush inside. And I think he's just, because he's kind of like I said again, like sort of a in-between type of end tackle, he kind of brings a little different style of rush to the front.
That was defensive coordinator Matt Burke talking about Denico Autry, who is set to return to the lineup for the Houston Texans against the Green Bay Packers. We know that he sat out the first 6 weeks of the NFL season due to violating the NFL substance abuse policy. And John, if you listen to what he said, he didn't want to call him a hybrid, but he called him a hybrid. He did not want to call him a hybrid, but he described him as a hybrid. And John, I'm going to be honest with you. It's been a very long time. It's been a very long time since I witnessed somebody from the Houston Texans who could play both inside and outside if you need him. Because you think about it, John, Jerry Hughes is on the injured reserve list. He's not going to be there. You're looking at maybe when you bring in, so let's just say you start Denico Autry and Foley Fatukasi or Tim Settle. Let's just say Denico Autry and Tim Settle, they're going to start at the defensive tackles, right? And then you have Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. Well, when it's time to give Will a break or when it's time to give Daniil a break, then you could bring in Foley Fatukasi or you can bring in Khalil Davis, put them in that defensive tackle position, and then move Denico Autry out to the end position. And so I haven't seen anybody do that for the Houston Texans since number 99. Now, I'm not saying that Denico Autry is the second coming of J.J. Watt. No, the second coming of J.J. Watt is Will Anderson Jr., and I have been on record saying that if he stays healthy and completes the career, he's going to be the best defensive lineman to ever play for the Houston Texans. So I'm not saying Denico Autry is J.J. Watt, but what I'm saying is he's multifaceted, and from the description that Matt Burke gave, you can use him on the inside or you can use him on the outside. And John, maybe you can explain to the listeners and the viewers this better than I can. When Matt Burke says that the way that he plays like an end as a tackle when he's lined up in the interior like that against a guard and going in that hand-to-hand combat, but he's still able to use defensive end moves. John, that's something that's not easy to do, right?
No, not for a guard. A lot of that for a guard, you're really, unless you're going up against like the Aaron Donalds of the world or the Chris Joneses of the world, right? And Denico Autry had one of those type of seasons last year. 11.5 sacks, 6.5 sacks around the number. Not Aaron Donald-esque, but he caused a lot of pressure on the quarterback and got home a lot in that middle because of how well he uses his hands. And for guards, you're really not. So a lot of these D tackles are evolved. And Denico Autry was one of those guys. He came into the league, I think, in 2014, 2013. He's been in the league for a very long time.
2014 with the Raiders.
So he's learned a lot over time. But you're not necessarily looking for the amount of finesse that Denico Autry is giving you compared to an edge is going to give to a tackle. They got a bevy of different moves to get to a quarterback.
Yeah.
Because they got the longer path to get to the quarterback. So they got to get there as quick as possible compared to Denico Autry that when he's on the inside, he has a straight shot, but you may have to deal with a little bit more a chip here or double team there. And so with Autry coming back, I do want to mention that the Green Bay Packers have really, and I do mean really, allowed a lot of pressure from within that center spot on that offensive line. And Autry, for me, just screams on 3rd and 8. You're going to be out there with Will and Daniil. And I think Foley, Foley's been playing some good football for the Houston Texans.
He really has.
We're going to stunt you guys up real quick.
Yeah.
We're going to
waiting to see that,
outside.
John. I've been waiting to see that.
So Autry is one of those guys where I may line you up at the 3, and I may just kind of, you and Will switch out.
Yeah.
And we're going to cause pressure with Will coming on the inside. And then Denico, I trust you to take care of your job on the outside because you've done it successfully before because he is a hybrid. He is a guy that can get it done as a hybrid on high levels, looking at hybrid. But he can get it done inside out. So he is a key. And I hate that this team isn't going to be at full strength in that position.
Yeah.
And overall, because quiet as kept, man, this is going to be a hell of a matchup. This is going to be one of those games that, again, I think we're going to talk about throughout next week. Like, man, did y'all see that Packers and Texans game? Yeah. I think it's going to be a shootout. And shootouts normally come down to 2 things. Mm-hmm. 1, turnovers. That's where you see the Green Bay Packers succeed at. The best turnover team in the NFL, +9 turnover differential, 17 takeaways defensively. So, okay, we look at that notch. That goes to the Green Bay Packers. The other, sacks. Getting after the quarterback, making sure that pocket is nowhere near uncomfortable. And Autry is a merchant at that. Autry can get after that quarterback and pair it alongside those other 2 guys with Foley. You're looking at a possibility to where Houston can force Green Bay to play in longer down situations, and those guys can get after the quarterback. So I really do think that because of that back end of the defense, I don't know. We may see blitz numbers go down, but Denico really loves winning with his front 4 guys. Yes. And he got one of his guys back in Denico Autry.
Yeah. And John, you don't want to say that anytime a player gets suspended, you don't want to call that a blessing in disguise.
Right.
But you're getting a player who is an older player. That's like we just said, he's been in the league since 2014. So he's been in the league at least 10 seasons. You're getting a guy who had went through training camp, but has coming in fresh after 6 weeks when everybody else's bodies is starting to break down, when you're getting some of these injuries, some of these soft tissue injuries, and he is fully healthy. And John, when I told him today, when I got a chance to talk to Denico Autry at his locker, and I told him what defensive coordinator Matt Burke said, he said, I think they got a taste of that today. I showed him a little bit of that at practice. I showed him a little bit what I can do. And so when you have him and the way that he's going to play, and then you have Will Anderson Jr., who has 28 pressures, who was the AFC. Hey, Peter, I understand that you love that the Green Bay Packers offensive line, but I mean, they haven't faced the AFC Defensive Player of the Week just yet in Will Anderson Jr. And on the other side, now Will Anderson has 28 pressures. That's tied for 7th. Daniil Hunter has 32 pressures, and that's tied for 2nd in the league. And these 2 guys, these young men, I think that you've seen what Will can do, and they're so competitive. So I know that Daniil Hunter is going to come out, and he still has that small disdain in his heart for the Green Bay Packers because of the years that he played with the Minnesota Vikings. They have that rivalry.
Still fresh.
Yeah, it's still fresh. So they still have that little rivalry. That's still in his heart a little bit. But here's the thing, though, John. I don't want to sit here and sound like everything is rosy, like the defense, the defense for the Houston Texans just going to come in there and just run over that Packers offensive line. John, Packers right tackle Zach Tom has allowed only 13 pressures on 200 pass blocks. He has not allowed a sack this season. Now,
he's been pretty good.
I know he hasn't went up against someone like a Daniil Hunter or Will Anderson Jr., but this is good numbers, John. If we replace Zach Tom and put left tackle Laramie Tunsil, a lot of people will be saying totally different things. They'll be singing praises. So we got to give right tackle for the Packers, Zach Tom. I got to give him some praise. I got to give him and what he's doing and being able to protect Jordan Love. But like we said, under pressure, and I honestly and truly believe that quarterback Jordan Love is going to be under pressure because when you have the injuries at linebacker, when you have the injuries at cornerback, Denico is going to have to do. Him and Matt Burke are going to have to do something to try to circumvent not allowing Jordan Love to take advantage of the weaknesses.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a little bit more the best plan of actions for a victory on the other side of the break. So don't go nowhere. I do want to let you guys know that throughout the course of Denico Autry's career, he's lined up over the B gap over 1,600 snaps, over the tackle over 2,100 snaps, outside of the tackle over 2,100 snaps. So he is well versed across that defensive line, and I think Houston is going to get a guy that can allow Denico to kind of play it safe a little bit with some of those zone coverages, because his front four guys will be able to get after the quarterback. We got more Locked On Texans on the other side of the break, but we love telling y'all how y'all can get some free money in your pockets. And FanDuel has been hooking y'all up all season, all summer, and they're going to continue to do that. America's #1 sports book. They're giving y'all big returns right now. You get one of those hunches in the middle of the game, go to your phone, you check out the latest stats, you view some of the live play-by-plays going on throughout the NFL. You can do all of that and so much more from your couch or in your car or in the garage, wherever you're watching the game, on the same place you can bet your bets. Place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets today, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. All you have to do is place a $5 bet for the first time. So if you haven't checked out FanDuel, what are you waiting on? Check out FanDuel.com right now. That's FanDuel.com for more. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Sarge, so I do think this is going to be a shootout, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Mixon being back, you talk about a real blessing. That ain't even in disguise. That's just, I put my name on a prayer list, and God came through right before I left the parking lot.
Right.
The light bill money was there.
Right.
Getting Joe Mixon back is huge, because I do think that allows for the Houston Texans to not have as many dead plays. The Houston Texans, without Joe Mixon, have a ton of dead plays. And those dead plays, I excluding kneels and penalties, I look at no gains or loss for yards.
Mm-hmm.
2 games we saw this team struggle offensively. Chicago Bears, 20 dead plays. 20. Minnesota, nearly 25 plays offensively where it was a no gain or a loss of yards.
That's a lot, John.
They cannot survive like that. So Joe Mixon is going to allow for Houston to, again, 1st and 10, going to 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5. And that's giving your quarterback and CJ Stroud a shorter distance to success than 3rd and whatever, 3rd and long, or 2nd and 8. They cannot have that, because I do think, again, this is going to be a shootout going up against an offense in Green Bay. Number 2, Sarge, and stop me if I'm wrong, but I do think, because of my concerns with Jaden Reed, I think he's a phenomenal receiver coming into his own self in the NFL. I do think Houston needs to play a little bit more Miles Bryant. Nickel cornerback, came over from New England, and I think he's going to have to play more, because still no Jeff Okudah, right? Am I wrong? Or are we going to see Jeff?
Still no Jeff.
Still no Jeff. D'Angelo Ross will be getting some snaps, but that cornerback field has question marks all around it. And Miles Bryant, going back to last year, whenever he guarded slot receivers, 8 yards allowed, 0 yards allowed, 12 yards allowed, 35 yards allowed, 0 yards allowed, 0 yards allowed, 26. So I'm looking at a lot of the highest that he allowed to a slot receiver last year was 44 yards. And I'm looking at multiple 0-yard games allowed to a slot receiver. Now, they're going to move Reed around a lot.
Yeah.
So when he's on the outside, Sting, we need for you to make up for that performance last week. So wherever he goes outside, I want to see him matched up with him a little bit more. But when he's in that slot, I do think Houston needs to find ways to get Miles Bryant on that field, because with Jalen Petrie, again, who's played some good football, it's leverage with him that's been the problem.
Yeah.
Receivers are able to kind of get that inside leverage, or they're kind of reading his body language, getting outside leverage. Same with Eric Murray. So you got a guy, Miles Bryant, who is a traditional nickel cornerback,
Well, wait, John, let me ask you a question.
On the field a bit more. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question real quick. So if you're going to bring in Miles Bryant, does that mean that you move Jalen back to safety and take Eric Murray out and let Jalen and Kalen Bullock play the safety?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm not Matt Burke and Denico Autry, thank God.
You can't take Jalen Petrie off the field because if nothing else, he can tackle. If nothing,
he's great against the run.
Yes, he's great against the run. He can tackle, and for as much as they're going to move Reed, that's cool. Sometimes they're going to hand him the ball off, and that don't require Jalen Petrie to go in coverage for nothing. You know what he's going to do? He's going to hit him, and then they're going to hand him the ball off again, and he's going to run around that corner, and Jalen Petrie is going to hit him again. The third time they get him the ball, guess what he's gonna do when he come around that corner? He's gonna be tiptoeing a little bit. Because if nothing else, you can talk about Jalen Petrie in coverage, but you cannot talk about Jalen Petrie when he's playing that slot position / Sam linebacker. Is that Sam? Right?
Yeah. Whatever. Everything down there.
Look, the Houston Texans run a 2 linebacker set most of the time with Azeez and Henry, right? But I mean, come on now, bro. Like if we keep look for our everydayers from the Himalayas, y'all already know that Jalen Petrie is really a linebacker playing defensive back.
Yeah, that's what it is.
He reminds me a lot of Palomalu as far as playing linebacker safety type. And I'm not saying that he's having the career like Troy Polamalu from the Pittsburgh Steelers had at that time. But what I'm saying is that Troy Polamalu wasn't the best in coverage, but when he comes downhill, he's going to hit you.
He's making plays.
No doubt about it. So with that being said, John, I'm just asking if you're putting, are you?
I think it's one of those. What does the down look like?
Makes sense.
What does the down look like? But I do think this is one of those all hands on deck. This is going to be a big game, man.
Yeah.
I do think Miles Bryant helps them out. He can play a little bit outside. That's not his strong suit. He's a body that can make a play or two out there. Yeah. But they got to find a way to, utilize his strengths because, again, I think it's going to be a shootout.
So one of my best plans of actions for victory for the Houston Texans starts in the trenches. We talked a lot about the defensive line, the offensive line. If the offensive line can hold up, they don't even have to play great. If they can just play good.
Yeah.
And I don't mean good enough. I'm talking about good. Not good enough. I need them to play good to almost great to almost outstanding if we're going to keep going up that ladder. But you got to start at good and then work your way up. Because the Green Bay Packers defense against the Arizona Cardinals, they didn't have any sacks.
Right.
No sacks, only 8 quarterback pressures. So if the offensive line for the Houston Texans can replicate that, keep giving give CJ a clean pocket, give him an area to be able to work, because he doesn't need a lot of time. He just needs to not be under pressure, even though he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when he is under pressure or blitz.
Make sure we say that.
Right. Or
Peter.
But if you give him time, what happens is that I have nothing but the utmost respect for the Green Bay Packers defensive backs. I mean, you can't take nothing away from a defensive backfield who can get that amount of turnovers in such a short period of time in only 6 weeks. I think that they have 17 turnovers, if I'm not
17 turnovers
mistaken. I can't remember the interception number, but I know that they're very aggressive, and they're very aggressive, and they play a ball hawk type style of defense. Here's the thing, though, John. If they're not getting these turnovers or interceptions and forcing these quarterbacks into making mistakes like that, they become an average defense.
They are allowing a ton of passing yards.
They become an average defensive backfield. And you can't have an average defensive backfield trying to hold Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. No. Those are two, and I'm going to tell you exactly what Tank Dell told me today when I asked him, I said, told me, excuse me, when he told me on Thursday in the locker room, he said, I asked him, do you have to switch up anything to switch up anything when you're going against such aggressive or ball hawking type defensive backs? And he's like, nah, because they got to play us too. So they got to play against me. He got to play against me. He said, and I'm going for the ball as well. I'm not sitting back waiting on the ball. I'm attacking and I'm going for the ball too. And he said, Sarge, you've been around here a very long time. You know, 7 ain't finna turn the ball over like that, right? 7 ain't just finna give the ball away. 7 is going to protect. He said, so me and Diggs gonna go out there and get it. And so that's what I mean. I need that offensive line to be great. I mean, to be good, to great, to outstanding. Give CJ the amount of time to pick apart those aggressive ball hawking defensive backs. And then when they try to change up their style, you got number 28 coming out the backfield, who, for as much as you talk about Josh Jacobs and the way that he runs, number 28 runs the same way.
The 2 games that he's been featured in full time, what does he rush for, over 250 yards?
Yeah.
So, we'll look at that. Also, I'm going to say this before we close out. I need to see Bobby scheme a way to get a matchup on those linebackers. They are allowing a lot of yards, and they got the speed in Houston to take advantage of that.
Dalton Schultz, he bike.
Oh, we did the over-under on Dar Ray, and it was 50. I'm doing the over-under, and I got, dang it, 50 yards for Dalton Schultz. 4 catches.
You say 4 catches, 50 yards? I might go on PrizePicks and see if they have something that's like 7 catches for 80 yards and a tutty.
If he do that, a lot of people in Houston gonna have to shut up.
For sure.
For sure. Thank y'all for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Big Sarge, where can they find you?
You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter and Big Sarge Sports with the Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a weekend episode, so make sure you stick around this weekend. But peace.